Hi guys! Today we're revisiting the big storybook for children, and today's story is called The 12 Dancing Princesses. There was once a king who had 12 daughters, each as beautiful as the dawn. The princesses slept in 12 beds all in one room, and because they were royal ladies, when they went to bed each night, the door was locked so that no harm could come to them. But every morning their shoes were worn out, as if they had danced the night away at some great ball. But they refused to answer all questions, and no matter how he tried, their father, the king, could not discover where they had been or how the princesses had gotten out of a locked room. At last, the king issued a proclamation saying that whoever found out where his daughters went each night, that man, be he high-born or a poor man, could marry any of the princesses he wished and reign in the king's place when the monarch died. Several young princes came from neighboring kingdoms to the royal palace, confident that they would solve the mystery, and the king gave each prince 3 days before demanding an answer from them. Each prince was wined and dined, greeted kindly by the princesses, and allowed to sleep outside their locked door. But each time the same thing happened. Each prince was given a glass of wine by Princess Melisande, the youngest of the king's daughters. After drinking it, he promptly fell asleep and awoke the next morning to find 12 pairs of shoes with holes in them. Sadly, each prince had to admit failure and return home, while the princesses laughed and the king grew more and more puzzled and sad. Some distance away from the palace, an old soldier named Martin was setting out to find new employment. Although no longer young, he was still a fine man and, which was more important, he had quick wits and a very kind heart. As he walked through a wood, the soldier met an old woman who was carrying a large bundle of kindling. "Give me your wood. It is too heavy for you to carry," cried Martin. "Thank you, soldier. My cottage is not far from here," replied the old woman. "What brings you to these parts?" "I seek some way of earning an honest living." "Step inside my cottage, soldier, and share a meal with me while I tell you about the 12 daughters of the king," replied the old woman. So this is one of the princes, and he fell fast asleep, and there are the shoes with holes. And there's the soldier and the old woman with the wood. And so, as Martin shared a simple meal of bread and cheese and ale with the old woman, he learned all about the king's offer to the person who discovered where the princesses went each night. The soldier's eyes gleamed with eagerness as he listened. "Oh, I would dearly love to try to find out why the shoes are worn through each night," he cried. "And so you shall," said the old woman, "for I, like you, soldier, and I shall help you all I can. First, a word of advice. Do not drink the wine the youngest princess offers you each night, or you will never succeed. Now, take this cloak with you. It is no ordinary cloak, for when you put it on, you become invisible to mortal eyes. Always carry the cloak with you, for you never know when you may need it. Off you go, and may good fortune go with you." The king received the soldier courteously. He ordered his servants to bring the soldier some fine clothes in exchange for his own travel-stained garments, and then led him to meet the princesses. After a delightful meal and an evening of music and songs, the 12 princesses yawned and said they were very tired. "We are off to bed now, dear father," cried Princess Melisande. "If the soldier wishes to keep guard, we will give him a cup of wine to help him keep awake." "Thank you kindly," replied Martin, and he followed the princesses out of the room. So there is Martin with the old woman, and there's Martin getting new clothes from the king. Martin was left in the outer chamber as the princesses went inside to prepare for bed. Later, Princess Melisande came out with a cup of wine. But the soldier remembered the old woman's words, and he only pretended to drink. Unseen by the princess, he emptied away the wine into a nearby vase. Then Martin settled down, as if preparing to stay awake all night. But after a while, he allowed his eyes to close. Martin gave a little snore as if he was really asleep. And it worked. Princess Heartsease, the king's eldest daughter, tiptoed in and smiled to see Martin sleeping so soundly. "'Tis a pity this poor fellow will never know where we go," she whispered. "He is quite a handsome soldier, to be sure. Hurry, sisters, put on your finest gowns and your most elegant shoes. The time has come to go." Soon the 12 princesses were dressed in beautiful gowns with dainty slippers on their feet and combs and ribbons in their hair. Opening his eye just a little, Martin saw the eldest princess press the brass knob on the head of her bedstand. Immediately, the bed sank to the floor and a trap door opened. The princesses disappeared through the trap door. Princess Melisande, who was the last, cried, "I feel uneasy. I feel as if some mischief is about to befall us." Her words spurred Martin into action. Quickly, he donned the invisible cloak and followed the princesses down through the trap door. But he stepped upon the gown of the youngest princess, and she stopped. "Someone has just stepped upon my gown," she cried. But of course, the soldier was invisible because he was wearing the magic cloak. "You silly little goose, you probably just caught it on a nail on the wall," cried her older sister. There's him pretending to be asleep, and there's the princesses starting to sneak off. At the bottom of the steps, which had led through the trap door, Martin found himself among a grove of jeweled trees, the like of which the soldier had never seen, even in the many foreign lands where he had traveled in the king's service. The leaves on the trees were all of silver, and they sparkled like stars. Martin broke off a small silver leaf branch, and he hid it beneath his magic cloak. But as the soldier broke off the branch, there was a loud crack, and Princess Melisande heard it and gave a cry of dismay. "What was that?" she cried. "All is not well with us tonight." "It was the wind cracking the branches together," laughed her sisters as they all hurried on. As they passed through the groves, Martin noticed that the leaves on the trees changed. One avenue of trees had leaves of pure gold, while further on, the leaves were made from glittering diamonds. Once again, the soldier broke off a branch from each of the different kinds of trees, and each time that she heard the loud crack, the youngest princess trembled with fear. "All is not well with us tonight," she cried. "Something is wrong here in the enchanted grove. We should turn back." But the others just laughed, and Princess Heartsease chided her sister gently. "Think how disappointed our princes would be if we returned to the palace," she cried. "The sound you heard was their joy at seeing us again." The youngest princess found a little comfort in her sister's words, but Martin nearly laughed aloud as he put the precious branches under his cloak. So there's the first tree. That looks like the silver tree. And then here are the sisters again. I think this one, from her face, I think this is the youngest one. This is Melisande. I think she's the worried one. I think so. On and on walked the princesses, with Martin following closely behind them, his magic cloak clutched around him, hiding both the soldier and his jeweled branches. At last they came to a great lake, its water shimmering and deep, deep blue. On the shore of the lake there were 12 boats, and standing by the boats were 12 young men. By their elegant clothes and noble bearing, Martin knew that these were the 12 princes that the princesses had come to meet. "Here they are at last," cried one prince. We thought you had forgotten, cried another. Why are you late? Asked the youngest prince anxiously to Princess Melisande. I fear all is not well, replied the youngest princess, but why I feel this way I cannot tell you, for there is no sensible reason. My little sister fears the wind rustling in the trees, laughed Princess Heartsease. Perhaps I am being foolish, said Princess Melisande. I get foolish fancies. Oh, Prince, the boat seems heavier tonight. I cannot understand it, replied the prince. I feel tired, as if there was more than the two of us in this boat. But that is nonsense, isn't it? The princess nodded her head, for neither she nor the prince could see Martin sitting beside her. Each of the other princesses was being rowed across to the opposite shore by one of the princes. On the shore stood a magnificent castle. The castle was illuminated with bright lights, and from inside came the sound of merry music. Fine music for dancing, mused the soldier as he followed the princes and princesses inside the castle. Just look at the princes. That's where they're going. Once inside the palace, the dancing began. Round and round they whirled, watched by the invisible soldier. On and on danced the princesses, and the soldier danced too, all by himself. It is small wonder that these royal shoes are full of holes, he mused. Occasionally, the princesses and their royal partners had a sip of wine. Martin drank from the goblet when one of them put it down. Surely my goblet is not empty already, cried Princess Melisande. What is wrong with you tonight, teased Princess Heartsease. No one but you can have drunk the wine. We all have wine of our own. Yes, that is true, replied the youngest princess. Unseen by anyone, Martin picked up the princess's empty wine goblet and hid it beneath the folds of his magic cloak. Time for us to go, sisters. We cannot dance any longer. Our shoes are full of holes, laughed Princess Heartsease. On the journey back, Martin chose to sit in the boat carrying Princess Heartsease, and despite herself, the eldest princess also felt a strange sense of unease and thought the boat rather heavier than usual. But she chided herself for her silly fancies as she bade farewell to her prince. Then she shepherded her sisters up the stone stairs to the trapdoor in their bedroom. But Martin hurried past the princesses, and when they arrived back and they had all peeped at him, he gave a loud snore which made the princesses giggle softly. On the following 2 nights, Martin once again followed the 12 princesses, wearing his invisible cloak. He journeyed with them across the lake, danced and drank with them, and he was back safely outside of their door when they came to look at him. After breakfast, on the day that the king demanded an answer, the princesses gathered around Martin, who stood before the king. Well, soldier, where do my daughters go each night? Asked the king. Yes, tell us, soldier, where do we go? Mocked Princess Melisande. To the marketplace, perhaps, to buy fish? Or did we go to the baker's for a loaf of bread? Chuckled Princess Rosabella. One by one, the princesses shouted out where they might have gone. Only Princess Heartsease remained quiet and thoughtful. There was a look in Martin's shrewd eyes that made her feel rather afraid. No, ladies, you visited none of those places, replied the old soldier. You went instead through a trap door, down some secret stairs, through wondrous groves of enchanted trees, over a shimmering lake to a magnificent castle. Here you danced with 12 princes until your shoes were quite worn out. From a bag which he carried, Martin drew out the boughs of silver and gold and the jewels. Here is the proof of my story, he cried. Branches from each of the enchanted groves, and here is a golden goblet from the palace. Each of your daughters drank from a goblet such as this one. And Martin handed the king a golden goblet, encrusted with jewels in the shape of the letter M. Why, that is my goblet! No wonder we could not find it anywhere, cried Princess Melisande. seems that your story is true, soldier, said the king dryly. Well, you have proved yourself a far better man than others of more noble birth. Which of my daughters do you wish to marry? Melisande, Lavender, Poppy? Nay, sire, I am no longer young, so I choose your eldest daughter to be my bride. And so Princess Heartsease and the soldier were married that very day, and everyone thronged the streets to wish them well, including the old woman whom Martin had met in the wood. Good fortune to you, soldier, and a long and happy life to you and the princess, she cried. I see that you used my gift well. And before Martin could reply, the old woman had disappeared into the crowd, never to be seen again.